This guy.
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
You ready?
40. 50. We've got,
I'd like to bring the August 14th, 2023 Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and hold a moment of silence for our men and women in uniform, our first responders, and the people of Ukraine. Thank you. I'd like to announce that on August 7th, after our workshop meeting, an executive session was held in relation to legal. Whitehall Township has an obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and to review all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. This includes taking meaningful actions that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics. The township, in its land use decisions, does not discriminate against persons based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, or familial status, and reviews all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. Public comments made on the basis of bias and stereotype concerning people within these protected classes will not be taken into consideration by the township in its deliberations. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Full board at your leisure.
Commissioner Dia,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
and President Marks.
Yes.
Passes 5 ayes, 0 nays.
Public hearing and voting on conditional,
No, no,
yeah,
motion.
I know.
Motion.
What's that?
Other minutes. We had 2 sets of,
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the second set of minutes from the regular public meeting of July 10th, 2023? That was never done. That's correct. Do I have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Attia,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
and President Marks.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Public hearings and voting on conditional use. The conditional use, index number 2022-23A, was pulled tonight. Unfortunately, it was not properly advertised. So if you are here in reference to WB Homes and the conditional use hearing, that will not be held tonight. It's going to be rescheduled for next month's meeting. I sincerely apologize. We didn't find out until late this afternoon. Courtesy of the floor. What's that?
I'd like to go ahead and announce that Commissioner Roman is again absent, and it's not excused.
Noted. Courtesy of the floor, comments for non-agenda items will be strictly monitored to no more than 3 minutes per person. Let's be fair about this, and let's be good to our neighbors, and we'll get through this. Courtesy of the floor.
Don Brensinger. Your name and address, please, then.
Hello, my name is Don Brensinger. I'm at 4249 Cypress Lane. So we recently moved to Taylor Villas, right up there in Cypress Lane. And after 30 years of living on a busy street in Hockey, that was a nice change. But soon after we bought our property, we find out that developers trying to are looking to relocate trail access to the rail trail. So he's looking to relocate it right alongside my house, right next to my back door. And it's going to go through I believe it's emergency spillway. There's a retention pond right behind my house. So it would go through that emergency spillway, which we found out how important that was. I guess it was last month with all them rains. That was we're glad we had that. But anyway, this wasn't in the original site plan that we were given when we purchased our house. And we don't think it's right that soon after we purchased our house, you know, he's trying to change it and move this, relocate this trail. So basically, we're just hoping this can't go through. That's about it. It wasn't on the original plan. He's trying to change it.
What's your address again, sir?
4249 Cypress Lane.
And this is the Ironton Rail Trail you're talking?
This is the Ironton Rail Trail, right. It'll be an access from, it's up on a hill a little bit, so it's an access trail to the Ironton Rail Trail.
Oh, okay, you're in Taylor Villas.
Off bridge, off of South Church, off a
You're-
bridge.
Yeah, you're in Taylor Villas, okay.
Yes.
And he's not gonna move the rail trail that much?
No, he's not moving the rail
So then I
trail.
misunderstood you.
No, maybe I-
took this, he was trying to move the entrance to the rail trail that
No.
you're talking about.
No, maybe I mispronounced it.
No, I may
but
have misunderstood, so.
Trail access. So there is one proposed, you know, up the street from us. But now he's trying, and that's what was on our original site plan.
I can add some
Clark, can you
clarity if
shed
you
some
want.
light
Yeah.
on this?
Yeah, the developer came to me about 2 or 3 months ago and said that the original path for the trail that's shown on the plans, there was complaints from, I guess, 2 neighbors that the trail goes between the 2 houses.
Okay,
And he said, can we come and take a look at it and maybe try to come up with a different path? They came to my office, we looked at a couple different paths, he came up with an idea. It would carry it across the spillway, but it's a concrete spillway.
Okay.
So obviously, when it's raining heavily, you're not gonna be out looking to get down the trail. Okay, so it does come off of Bridge Street and come in, so that's your house on the end.
I'm right on
Okay,
Bridge
all right.
Street.
Nothing's approved yet, okay? That has to be
Okay.
a change of the plan, it's gotta be voted by the board.
Oh, it does have to be voted by
It's
the
a change on
board.
the plan.
Okay.
Okay, so it does have to be voted on. Looking at the grades, that was probably the least intrusive place to relocate it, but if that's, not amenable to you, we'll have to take another look at it.
Okay,
So, it will not be, it's not something that we can just go ahead and do and
Okay.
change, okay?
that was my concern.
Correct. It shows on the original plan. It is a change that will require the board to look at it again. Originally, we thought that they were going to try to eliminate that access, and that wasn't appropriate for the rest of the community, because there's a couple different ways to get down there, but from that phase, that's a more convenient way to drop down onto the trail.
Okay.
So, because Bridge Street's kind of steep, so, wouldn't be bad going down, but then you've got to stop at the bottom of it. So we're trying to find a pathway to get down to the trail from the community that's still ADA compliant. That's the hard part, is trying to get it down that hill. So
Okay.
I can let the developer know that there's pushback from you,
Yeah.
okay, that it's not going to work where he's showing it now, where he's proposing it.
Right,
So we'll-
because I'm in the same boat as those 2, apparently you say two homeowners complained. Well,
right.
Now they're
Yeah, just
pushing it
move
to
it
mine.
somewhere else,
Yeah,
right, okay.
That'll go
So-
right next to my
Yeah,
back door.
okay, I will, I'll contact them tomorrow.
Okay,
Let them
okay.
know, and it's not over until, this comes up, but knowing your position, I'll make sure that you're on board with whatever happens, and in the progress as we
great.
go.
And it's ultimately up to the homeowner board,
Yeah,
HOA
we have to
board.
look at it too, yeah, it
Right.
affects everybody, because it's
Well,
a common
right,
area.
but they tell me they're opposed to it, but they think he's gonna try to bypass
No,
them.
he can't, no.
Okay,
It's
that's
gotta be on the
just
up
what
and
I'm
up,
told.
okay?
Okay, gotcha.
It's a community, it's a collective ownership of the open space, and it's a change to what was on the original plan.
Right.
That you bought from.
Exactly,
It's gotta be approved by the homeowner association.
gotcha, okay,
All right.
thank you.
You bet.
Okay, I think it's Dennis Laub.
Yeah, I'm on an agenda item.
Okay. Ken Snyder.
Ken Snyder, 4272 Abigail Lane. I'm not discussing the 2 items on the agenda, but I would ask the board to please review these 2 items as far as moving forward on them and alter your agenda for tonight. The first one is Bill number 292023, which is the referendum. As the referendum was done, it was done in haste, and if you look at the requirement on the tax arrangement, it provides for an $850,000 tax burden on our residents as written. And I think that was an error by placing of a decimal point, the incorrect arrangement. The other thing is, that this was done in a 30-day period to get this on the agenda. North Whitehall, we're in partnership with them on what they're doing. They do have a preservation board. Their procedure to set their board was 1 year, establishing a preservation board to review and find out all the terms and conditions of it and work their way through that process. At this particular point, I don't think we did enough due diligence to have a referendum until we get all of our ducks in order. Bill number 3023, 2023. I think this should also be tabled or removed as well. The due diligence on this particular bill has not been done. As far as I understand, there has never been a formal request from the Weinhoffer Farm to the Board of Commissioners asking for the money in writing. If anybody in this audience, or even myself, applies for a mortgage or a grant, there's certain things that you should do. These are the items that I don't know if it's been handled or taken care of. Number one, who is going to be the entity that's involved? Is it the LLC or the farm? What's the history of the farm? How much farming did they do in the township? How many parcels do they have in the township? Nobody seems to know those answers as far as what's going on. The easement of the parcels. The easement itself has no deed restrictions, nor does it refer to any PIN numbers, so you don't know exactly what you're giving the easement on. They may have more than one parcel. I don't know that because it wasn't discussed. In previous arrangements, when you turned around and gave special exceptions and did things regarding parcels, you called out specific easements. In this case, there is no parcel numbers listed, so it could be anywhere that they own ground within Whitehall Township, but we all know what we're talking about, but it doesn't say that here. The appraisal report that was done missed one of the parcels, and therefore the acreage is not exactly correct. It's either 144 or 155. Nobody knows that number at this point. North Whitehall has not approved your letter that you sent over as of last Tuesday. They're still reviewing it. Does it constitute a spot zoning arrangement? I don't think it does, but nevertheless. On Lehigh County side, when we first started this process, somewhere it was discussed that there was a $750,000 request for funds or somewhere plus or minus that arrangement. There was never any document presented to the board, nor is it available for me to read that you asked for the $750,000. At that particular point, Lehigh County was going to match it
Mr.
with a
Schneider,
project.
I'm sorry, but your time is waning.
Really?
Yes,
Okay, I'm fine.
thank you.
That's okay. No problem. Thank you.
Anthony Kopak.
Anthony Kopak, 3763 Dogwood Drive, Whitehall. With the bridge to Ray Street closed, I've been going down over the bridge on Pine Street to get in the caddy. And I just happened to take a look over at them townhomes or whatever, Haven Ridge. I know we discussed that back when the weather was cold out, and there was discussion, the residents here complaining about when that's gonna get paved in there. So I'm looking over there. The word at the meeting was, as soon as the weather breaks, things are gonna get moving there. Well, the weather's gonna break, but it's gonna get cold again. Whatever happened to paving in there?
They're working on that right now, as a matter of fact. They have a new paver in there. They're they're taking out some of the base course that's broken up. The road's been tested for solidness, so it's solid, but there's a lot of dips and whatnot, so all that's being worked on now.
Okay, well, I can only see what I can see from the road. I can't see
No,
every road in
understood.
that, and
The
drive through
original,
it.
yeah, the original contractor has gotten too busy. He couldn't do it anymore. So the owner has contracted with somebody else to come in and repave everything.
And then a couple meetings ago, I brought up that service connection for that house on Rural Road. And what I was told, well, they have 2 years to repave that. Well, did anybody look into when that hole was opened? I believe it's a water connection. I mean, do I gotta sit down and email Lisa Helm if that's her service hole in that road that hasn't been repaved? And does anybody really gonna remember in 2 years to do that? I mean, does anybody know what they ate 2 years ago for dinner?
There's a street opening permit that tracks all that. I'll be able to look into that for you. I know it's been a problem. I know they did some patchwork on it, but it keeps sinking. It's not the water authority. It's a street opening permit for that residence, for the water line. So I will find out what's going on with that.
Because I believe the gas holes have been repaved last year already. I mean, you got cars swerving around and into the other lane, it's a hazard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Geringer?
I didn't realize I was signing up for this. I was just signing up to speak, maybe.
Deb Rosen?
Hi, Deborah Rosine, 4408 North Church Street. And I wanted to come and share some great information and to also say that I think that Brandon Himmler did a great job with Camp Whitehall this year. It's a wonderful asset for our township. The EAC, of which I'm the president of, that's the Environmental Advisory Committee, we sponsored a couple of days of the camp, and we brought the Wildlands Conservancy one day in to do something about the wildlands, where they brought in an owl and a snake and some other animals, and we did some crafts with the kids. And the Whitehall Copley Press has been really wonderful at sharing some of the things that we've been doing in the community. So if you don't get this paper, get this paper. It's a great way to find out about good things that are happening in town. The other thing too is we completed the first phase of what we call the Bird Watch program in the Parkway, where we've taken the ruins of one of the buildings that was originally done probably 10 plus years ago by some other members of the EAC with a bird blind. Well, we've cleaned that area out. It's been mulched. We had great help from Sheldon Chrisman in getting us some mulch and getting that done. And then we're hoping to put in a native plant garden that will feed the birds, where people can come. They can watch the birds. They can do a little picnic. And just the final thing that I'll say is that the EAC is very much in favor of preservation of the Weinhofer Farm. So much so that we wrote a letter that I know we sent to all of you, and I hope you read it. We did hard research on what other communities are doing and what the cost would be for our community, and we're very much in favor of the preservation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rosine.
Bill Falk?
I'll speak on the agenda item later on.
Brian Sabo?
Brian Sabo, 3903 Elizabeth Court. I'm not sure if this is the right venue for this. I was told by the staff at the police desk to come here to bring up my concern. I just start out by saying I applaud the Whitehall Police Department. This morning we had an alleged shots fired card in my neighborhood on Brynwood Drive. And the issue I have is there's a rental property, and it's been a nuisance rental property. Now today there was allegedly shots fired in that house, or at that house. I spoke to many of my neighbors today. Throughout the day, I actually called off work because my wife called 911. She heard the gunshots outside on the porch, and it's concerning. And enough is enough, and we have to come together as a community. So, what I asked, came down here today to see if there was like some kind of crime watch we can start. No one knew anything. I guess it used to be. So, I'm not sure how I can start one. I can tell you we have at least 15 neighbors who are willing to do so, and probably more when I ask. So that's it.
Police Chief Marks, would you like to chime in on this, or is there an investigation being held? I don't know anything about it.
I
Okay.
can talk to Mr. Sabo after the
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one extra question of Chief Marks? And I mean, since we have a willing volunteer here regarding the crime watch, is that something that we could bring back, get operational? It's hard to get volunteers, so if this man wants to do something, I don't think we should turn him down.
Right now, obviously, we're still in a staffing issue. We're still missing 10 police officers on the street, so it's something that we would definitely support, but it's not something that we could facilitate right now. We can support it, we can, provide some resources, but to actually staff a community police officer that would be dedicated to any kind of crime watch programs, it's not in our abilities right now.
I mean, if you two stay in communication regarding this, could he do something?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, now, this one here from the Weinhofer family. Do you want to discuss that now, or do you want to wait until we get into the specifics later on?
Can we wait?
what, again, I'm asking you.
Just want to make a statement,
Oh.
at the end. and-
Okay.
Thanks.
Is that it
We're
for
done,
courtesy
yeah.
of the floor? That's all for courtesy of the floor. Public hearing and voting on ordinances. Bill number 27-2023. This is a first hearing, so there will be no comment. An ordinance authorizing the township mayor to accept a deed of dedication from Jeffrey F. Voice and Mary B. Henninger along Washington Street for the purpose of right-of-way and future road construction. Bill number 29-2023, an ordinance to initiate a referendum asking whether the electors favor the imposition of an additional earned income tax at the rate of 0.10% to be used for financing the preservation of land in or the acquisition of land for open space uses as authorized by the Open Space Land Acquisition and Preservation Act. I'm making a recommendation to the board that we table this and refer it to L&L because the membership feels that we are not we're not prepared for this at this time, and we'd like to do more research on it in order to make a more educated decision. Do I have a motion?
As a member of L&L, I would motion that this be moved to L&L for
Do I have a
discussion.
second?
I would second it with the caveat that it return.
The Board of Commissioners.
Absolutely.
I would like to third it in.
I would like to third it in terms of, I would certainly like to see this come back before the Board of Commissioners, along with Commissioner Warren's point, by October, November at the absolute latest, that this continues to move forward.
You won't get it all done in one meeting in September. I think you should,
Looking at the solicitor and he's.
you should give it, solicitor, 3 months. I agree with the timeline, that this doesn't linger. We need to get this done.
We can do it as quickly as you want, but 1 month when next month's L&L is already almost on top of us is not going to be a lot of time. But it's obviously your decision.
Why don't we not push it, but say that it has to be back by September, October, has to be complete by November's L&L. That would give it 3 months to get worded out in L&L, and then the board would have it before the end of the year to vote.
I mean, the time sensitiveness is if it's not voted on tonight, it's not going to be on the November ballot, so.
So we have until spring ballot, but I don't want to leave it linger until
Right.
February, March. I would prefer that it gets in L&L, it gets worked on, and it gets back out to this board with dispatch, so that we can move it on and the residents know what's coming and to them and where it's at.
Can I ask Attorney Gross a question? So so obviously we can't hit the November deadline for the referendum. But say if this was submitted anytime September, October, November, we can conceivably get this onto the May ballot pending county approval. Okay. Now, I mean, are there any reasons going forward that this referendum could not take place in May?
It's a pretty open-ended question to ask a lawyer. Are there any reasons? If the question is, if this comes back to the board in November and the board approves it, subject to the then regular approval process regarding a referendum, I would expect it to be on the May ballot.
Do we know the deadline from the county for the May ballot?
I haven't counted back the weeks yet, but it would not be that early. It would probably be in
In
February.
essence, the deadline is tomorrow for the November ballot, so that's basically a 3-month period. Middle of August, September, October.
It would probably be February.
It's like 2.5 months till election day, so to speak. And that's when they want it by tomorrow to clear it for the election, so that should tell you in May, it's probably due in April. I'm sorry.
It's
March, early
probably due in
March.
February. It's either February or March. It would depend on when election day
If
is.
we have this cleaned up by November, we have plenty of time. That gets it on the ballot.
I do agree with Commissioner Ginder. I'd like to see this cleaned up before the end of this year, for sure.
So the bill has been revised to not have the wording that we have for it right now, but to go ahead as per President Marks' to go ahead and refer this over to L&L. And we had a motion and a second and a third on that. That's correct.
If you like.
That's what we will be voting on.
Why don't, do we need the motion to go to L&L? That's just the board consensus, I believe.
Typically, it's just been done by consensus.
Consensus of the board wants to send it to L&L, it goes, but we all realize, and we're all recorded, that this will come back, and it will come back with dispatch in a short period of time.
Well, we took the motions, we can vote on it.
No, all right.
Right, right. Please poll the board, unless anyone else has any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Commissioner Fisher? Oh, wait a minute, Commissioner Ginder.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought it was you. Pardon me. I didn't remember you were the third. Okay, Commissioner Warren?
Fisher was the first?
Yeah. You were.
That's how I have it down.
You
but
did.
You can give them one too.
I didn't have you as the first. I
You
had,
called me and I voted.
well, no, and again, I had him,
I
but
do what you
he
tell
said
me
he
to do.
didn't, so
When you tell me I want your vote, I
all
give
I
it.
know wasn't the guy with the beard at the end. Okay. And Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Atia?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniger, aye. Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
And President Marks?
Yes.
The new motion there passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 30-2023, an ordinance authorizing a loan from the Lafarge Fund for the acceptance of the Weinhofer farmland preservation easement. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions from the board? Would the Weinhofers like to make their statement?
Brad Weinhofer, Weinhofer Farms, 4547 Spruce Street in Whitehall. First off, my family wants to thank Donna Wright and Diane Garinger, along with the Lehigh County, and their efforts in doing everything possible to help us preserve this property. We want to thank the board for granting us this opportunity. We also want to thank all the residents from the township, as well as from the surrounding townships, that have been in support of this and have approached us offering help in any way possible. Saving farmland from development cannot happen with assistance from only a few individuals. It is the responsibility of the entire community. A community in which we believe desires and will benefit from the preservation of this last remaining farmland and woodland area in Whitehall Township. Since our last meeting, my family has been accused by certain people of only doing this to turn a quick profit while using township funds. To those of you who have made accusations about my family's motives, if my family was solely doing this for the purpose of money, we wouldn't be trying to permanently sell off development rights and an agricultural easement valued at $13,000 plus per acre and willing to take roughly $8,400 per acre between the county and possible township help, an easement some apparently think is imaginary. As far as the accusations against my family that we are not doing this for the community, we have and continue to do plenty to save the township we grew up in. Helping the township restore and maintain the Pride Farm, for example, which we never to this day ever built a township for, among others. For those of you questioning how preserving this property benefits the entire township, residents walk the roads and take bike rides every day. It will save the township $15,160 per new student in a township where 68% of school funding is provided by local taxpayers. Also during COVID, and to this day, we have had families come from out of state to see our bright yellow canola fields we plant every year. Regarding public statements toward this issue and my family's motives for doing this, it is unrealistic to expect farmers to take the burden of protecting land in this area while losing out on potential development value of the land and limit its uses forever. Those claiming only 40 homes can be built on this property is completely false. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, we have seen the number of farms in the United States drop from 6.8 million in 1930 to 2 million as of last year, and decreasing faster. The GAP report noted that more than 31 million acres of U.S. agricultural land have been irrevocably lost to urban expansion since 1982. An additional 175 acres of farm and ranch land lost every hour to make way for housing and other industries. Even more concerning is the fact that 18 other countries own more land, farmland, than the biggest farm in the United States, and that's Bill Gates. The fact is that farms are becoming dinosaurs, especially family farms. If we don't continue to help local farmers compete against other markets, they will soon become extinct. It is only getting worse as equipment prices are skyrocketing, seed costs.
Can you make it brief?
I mean, there's
Finish
four of
up.
us, can we,
You want us to get up and continue? We can do that.
How long will you be, Mr. Weinhofer?
I'm halfway.
I mean, if he has 4 people in the audience, I mean, each one technically counts as a person, so.
Okay, please finish.
I would hand it off to one of them to finish.
No, he can finish. He can finish, that's fine.
Go ahead, you finish.
He can finish. I'm sorry, I just wanted clarification, that's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But this counts as
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it's collective. Yeah.
With diminishing open space and God creating no more, I can understand why certain people against this cause would not want to see this pass. And though it's only a few, it is tremendously insulting and unfortunate that those accusers are attacking my family that has not only lived and done business in this township for most of their lives, but has always contributed and given back to the communities in which we live and do business in. To those of you who have expressed that you would rather see the township money spent on fixing up roads, local parks and playgrounds, pools, and other recreational areas, my family has always and completely agrees with that effort. However, this is a completely separate issue, and possibly the last opportunity to save one of the last properties of this size in the township, and the first one ever for this township, joining the many surrounding townships who have financially helped preserve farmland. My family has been in the agricultural industry for 4 generations, since my grandfather moved to the Lehigh Valley from Austria in the early 1900s. Though he never owned property, he rented a small farm where he lived. As many farm children and grandchildren do, my dad took liking to farming. My grandfather worked at Mack Trucks, and my dad, a Whitehall High School grad, worked at Bethlehem Steel until they closed, while also trying to be as involved as much with farming as possible. I'm hoping to do the same thing. Most farmers cannot afford to only farm, so my family also owned a local trucking company for many years, and most farmers have second and even third jobs to help sustain the farm and support their families. After years of always renting land, most of which we do, my parents had the first opportunity to purchase their family farm on Spruce Street in 1995, consisting of roughly 25 acres in Whitehall, on which they built a home and still live today. There is 154-acre property surrounding their home, that of which we had the privilege to rent and farm until this past year, when we were approached by the previous owner and developer that he was selling and retiring. After being approached many times and asked to sell our 25 acres, my family refused and continued to refuse, hoping that one day we can preserve this farm. Even though we were and are not in a great financial position after weather conditions the past couple years, we agreed to purchase the property in an attempt to save it. No, we did not have to. The only way we knew we could possibly afford to do this is with the township's assistance, along with the county's funding. Yes, we took a risk to preserve it forever, with, I believe, most of the residents in favor of this, in hopes the township would feel the same way about preserving cherished farmland as we do. My family and the county asked to revote due to many of the commissioners stating on July 11th or July 10th they did not have proper time to do their due diligence. Again, even though we approached the township about this matter fall of 2022. In trying to do something we believe is pricelessly and eternally beneficial for this community and the environment, it has hurt us to have personal attacks on our character and motives. It is so unfortunate that...
I'll be considered the third person in your group.
It is so unfortunate that anyone has to be put through such an ordeal to do something this good in a township. But as the saying goes, anything important is worth fighting for. So here we are. We've continued to fight for what we and many of our fellow residents believe in is right. And now it is up to you to decide what type of future Whitehall Township will look like. No matter what anyone here or elsewhere has to say about us or this situation, We know that our hearts are in the right place, and that is all that matters. The truth is the truth, no matter how much some people try to twist it. It's sad that local farmers and some other local businesses are treated worse than big developers and corporations, many of which are not even from this area. We hope tonight you support saving a portion of what little open farmland is left in this township, as well as helping alleviate the negative impacts on our infrastructure due to mass development by voting to approve contributing $375,000 along with the county's funding to save this farm. We also hope that this has brought a light to the fact that more money must be invested to fix up recreational areas in the community, not only more funding to protect farmland and open space. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Weinhofer, would you like that letter entered into the minutes? Then you'll have to email it to our board secretary. Thank you.
Was there any more courtesy of the floor related to this? You got the list, courtesy of the floor. This is in relation to this.
No, there was no more courtesy of the floor. This is just the floor asking questions. Do you know what I mean? The first hand up there was Kenneth.
Okay. I thought there were other people who were signed up for courtesy of the floor
Well, and-
pertaining to this issue.
And again, oops. But they were for the ones here, except for Bill Folk. There's farm privatization there.
Okay. So let's call him up.
Okay,
Mr.
Bill
Folk?
Folk? Sorry, sometimes people put nothing for the reasons, and, so, excuse me.
Good evening, Commissioners and Whitehall Township residents. It's an honor.
Please state your name and address, sir.
I'm sorry. Bill Folk, 402 Keystone Avenue. Good evening, Commissioners and Whitehall Township residents. It's an honor and privilege to speak with you tonight about an important quality of life issue that affects all of us. Should the Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners vote in favor of adding township funds to a very generous amount offered by Lehigh County to preserve the first farm in township history? I won't envy your decision. It's a hard one to make. We all need food from farms, clothing and shelter, houses built by developers, in order to live happy and successful lives, all part of our American dream. Of these three essentials in life, two of them usually are in conflict: food versus shelter, with acreage from farms being brought and sold to build housing developments. Houses, as we know, are essential. New real estate builds the tax base and increase the annual budget. But what increase in services are needed after the new development is completed? Will there be more calls for fire? Police, the chief just said you're down 10 officers. The fire department is down volunteers. EMS. We heard at the July meeting that if developed, the farm in question could have a minimum of 35 or more homes built on it. At a minimum, that's at least 70 more vehicles driving in Main Street in Egypt, Cementon, and MacArthur Road, all which have congestion issues in the morning and evening rush hours. There would be more additional traffic with school buses in new development, garbage trucks, recycling trucks. Public Works would need to plow and salt more roads in the winter if it ever snows again. And yes, eventually patch new potholes. There would be more stormwater runoff for paved roads, which where will it go? I don't know about you, but I'd rather see a farm pond than another concrete retention pond. More demand on electric power grids and more water and sewer usage. Farms are more essential in my opinion. As for preserving the farm, the fertile land would be planted as a continued food source for possible corn, soybean, and wheat. A natural, undisturbed habitat would be maintained for the flora and fauna that is in the area. Rainwater would soak the ground and the water would water the crops and there would be no runoff. Preserving this farm would not create more traffic or more calls for first responders. The lush green trees that continue to provide oxygen and beauty to the surrounding hillside. It was also stated at the last meeting about 65% of taxpayers, who probably also vote, favor using tax dollars for open space, or in this case, farm preservation. I encourage you to find a creative way to fund the farm and be the first preserved farm in Whitehall Township history. In conclusion, I'd like to share a brief personal story with you. When I was a young boy growing up in Copley, remember getting into my family's car, driving down what was called 7th Street Pike at the time, going south into the big city of Allentown. We crested the hill at Grape Street, and we started going down Grape Street. I remember seeing on the left-hand side that there was a big cornfield there and a beautiful baseball field. And at the part of that baseball field is right by Route 22. In conclusion, that is gone now. It's a footprint now for the Whitehall or Lehigh Valley Mall. And once the farm is gone, it's gone forever.
Understood.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I yield back the balance of my time.
Diane Geringer, you want to talk now on this? No? Okay. And the last one was Dennis Laub.
You had somebody with short arms. Yeah,
No, these were people that signed up that wanted
For
to wait
courtesy of
until
floor.
we
Signed up for courtesy of the floor. Dennis Lobb, 4251 Adams Street, Whitehall. First off, I am not in a position to speak anything ill will of my neighbors, the Weinhoffers, by any means. I live in Egypt. I've lived in Egypt for over 50 years. I'm just against this going through. I just don't believe that we, Whitehall Township, should have anything to do with providing any kind of financial means for this thing to go through. If this land would have been developable, it probably would have, International Homes would have their homes there. People up there go to LERAC as many times during meetings. I've watched meetings. Did anyone ask LERAC as how many developers have tried to develop from International Homes, put proposals out there? I don't know. I don't have the answers. But just, I guess I'm probably the one guy in the room that's against it, but, nothing personal against them. If you have developers, if that land was so developable, you would have had a Jandal or a T or somebody come in and develop it and bid the price and develop the land, if that's the case. The way this came about real quick like this, I'm sorry to say, I just don't agree. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mrs. Fennell? Yeah, I'll get to you then. There.
Hello, Lori Ann Fanel, 3107 North 3rd Street. I'm just going to give my honest opinion on this farm. I would vote yes to preserve this land without raising taxpayer dollars. Find a way, but preserve the farmland. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Karen Pashevko, 3303 Musselman Court. I would first like to ask that our EAC letter be read into the minutes, if it hasn't been already.
Introduce it into the minutes. We can have the township secretary.
You should have the copy that we sent to you? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been to all these meetings, and just by show of hands, how many people here support preservation out there? Okay. So listen to the people. Now, I know the big rub here is where's the money going to come from? If all these people support it, they're going to talk to their neighbors, and we're going to be able to drum up enough support to pass the referendum. I feel confident that the referendum can be passed. Our EAC would be happy to help in some way if we can. So I think this is an investment in the future. It's not an expenditure. It's an investment in the future. And on our website, interestingly, there's a whole bunch of pictures. And there's this building, and there's the mall, and there's beautiful homes, and there's the IRT. But what, does anybody know what's the first picture that comes up? Anybody?
That's the farm.
It's a barn. It's a barn, which leads us to believe that we support farmland preservation. So let the picture do the talking. Preserve this farm for future generations. It's just the right thing to do. Thanks.
Anyone else from the floor? One of the Schneiders. But that's-
Hi, how you doing? Craig Snyder, 2629 Augusta Drive, Whitehall, Pennsylvania. First thing is, I've come to a few of the meetings also, like everybody else, and I'm here to speak a few things. My dad, of course, will speak up here, and I got to be honest with you, Mr. Weinhofer, the son, I appreciate you speaking on behalf of your father and the family. And I too will say that my dad is not here to look at develop the land. He is not here to do anything as far as developing ground. He's here because he cares about the township, just like Mr. Weinhofer, and his ability is to look at it and do it the right way. As I look at the hands that are raised here, there was a letter that was put in the Egypt mailboxes. And I'm from the Shot Avenue area, and I didn't get this letter in my mailbox. The people from Fullerton didn't get the letter in the mailbox. The people from Hockey didn't get their letter in the mailbox. And we talked about the community, but only the community of Egypt saw this letter. Only the community of Egypt is sitting here today defending it. And you guys as commissioners have an opportunity. Okay, from Fullerton, but I'm talking about the letter that I didn't get in my mailbox, all right?
If we could let him finish, please, and let him speak.
So there's people at Fullerton. I mean, I grew up playing at the Fullerton playground. The pool's closed. I grew up going to Smeton. The pool's closed. And believe me, I'm for preservation. I'm not against preservation, but I'm about doing it the right way for the community and to support the community. If you're gonna pass about funding and how to fund it, then do it that way. Take the step-by-step approach and don't ramrod this down the township. You know, there's voting from fear and voting from facts. If you look at the facts based on everything we've done, Mr. Weinhofer said he's been talking to the township since 2022 when he purchased the farm. That's a conversation that we don't know about what occurred. Did someone make promises that wasn't supposed to be? You know, we talk about the fact that we're taking money from 35% of a fund that's there to benefit the community as a whole, but I can't walk on that ground. I can't. I physically cannot walk in the ground. He can't, because it's owned by private equity. So I'm asking you guys to sit back and take a step back and understand. They compared ourselves to Weisenberg Township, Upper Macungie, Lower Milford in this letter. Well, that's not Whitehall Township. We're not the same township as Weisenberg Township with hundreds of acres. South Whitehall, I don't see South Whitehall on this list. A township that we're comparable to is not on the list. So I ask you guys to vote no tonight and take the same approach to funding and asking the residents. And if the residents are for it, Mr. Weinhofer may get more money because the residents are for it. So don't vote from fear of loss or change of commissioners or mayors in the future. Vote from fact tonight. And the fact is this: we have to do this the right way to benefit the community as a whole. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Schneider Jr.
Ken Snyder, 4272 Abigail Lane. This is a difficult situation for everybody involved. You all know I'm a developer, and I've been accused of wanting to develop, etc. The reality is there's two things that are going on. The first thing is the referendum. I support doing a referendum and letting it go to the people. It's the proper way to have the procedures worked through so we know exactly how to handle preservation within the township. The ordinance that's in front of you to vote on tonight, there's issues with that ordinance. The county, for example, promised us one thing, said no to it and back. You're going to approve an ordinance for $300 and some thousand, and we truly don't know if the county is going to match or do whatever they had to do. The first time was, you got the money. The next time it wasn't. There's been nothing from the county in writing telling us that they're matching funds or giving funds. So when you approve this tonight, you can make the commitment to do so, but have no idea what's happening on the other end unless something came through different, okay? The other thing is that as you work your way through the process, I think it's important that if you do nothing, that the ordinance does call out specific properties, specific arrangements, so you know it's tied to this arrangement. We passed the arrangement for North Whitehall last meeting. I don't know, unless you know, does the whole township now become part of this? Or is it just this parcel? Because nobody knows the answer to that question. So as we're working our way through in a hurried manner, there's things that are being overlooked. So I'm asking you to postpone this, get the referendum in place. If it passes, fund it, and go back in 2024 and have, if it's such prime ground from preservation, so be it, and reapply at that particular point. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor related to this?
I think the gentleman in the tie had his hand up first.
No, go ahead.
You're okay? I'm sorry.
Okay. I just saw hands.
Hi, I'm Nick Demian. I live at 4510 Spring Street, Egypt, and I have 15.77 acres that adjoin that property. I'm just asking with the matching funds, I thought when you go into farm preservation that the county gives so much and the townships or boroughs, they get their matching funds from grants from the states for open land. So why is it being brought up, correct me if I'm wrong, that you'd want to take the money from the Lafarge account if you get money from the state for this?
There is
no
such
additional
apparatus
money.
like that. No.
The state already is contributing to this project through the county.
We get no grant money from the state. per
Okay,
se.
all right.
You can't double dip on the state side.
Well, all right, that clears that up. All right, thank you.
Sir?
Good evening. I have an exhibit.
Please state your name and
Sorry,
address.
my name is Mike Gula. I'm with Van Cleef Engineering, and I'm here representing the Weinhoffers tonight. Can I approach you guys and give you guys an exhibit?
Thank you.
I'll give you.
Quote for this or
For the pleasure of the group, I have a larger one, so just set here so the audience can see what everybody else is looking at. Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Mike Gula. I'm with Van Cleef Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the Weinhoffers tonight. I don't have a history of this property like everyone else in the room. This is my first meeting that I'm attending. I'm here exclusively to talk about the developability of this property, whether or not you can get 20 lots out of it, 30 lots out of it, 40 lots out of it. It's approximately 168 acres plus or minus. The developable area that we've identified is approximately 143 acres. Excuse me. What I presented everyone tonight are two plans that were created over the years. They yield about 80 lots overall. Now, these lots were not engineered. Excuse me. These lots were not engineered. These lots were not tested. They do meet the by right zoning requirements. There is a significant amount of open space on this property left over. There are some steep slopes. The township has a significant steep slope ordinance. Those lots are, again, 1 acre minimum, larger in most areas. So again, we just wanted to, I'm sorry, on behalf of the Weinhoffers, we just wanted to show the yield that you could get out of this property.
I'm not an engineer, but I respectfully disagree with one thing on this print.
Yeah,
I'm also the senior member of the Copley Whitehall Sewer Authority.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Clark, I don't know if you want to comment on this, but my understanding of the situation is this cannot all be sewered on gravity sewer. So I just want to put that out there
that's
that
correct.
you may be
So-
correct on the acreage and the number of homes that could potentially be built on this parcel, but it doesn't meet the sewer requirements
For public sewer.
for public sewer. That's correct.
So, again, these lots are not engineered, so every single one of these lots would have to be tested.
Right.
For
And
online-
I just
for
wanted to
online
clarify
sewer.
that for everyone.
So, knowing that, some of the lots are oversized, they are 1 acre minimum. Keep in mind, this is a 1 inch equals 150 foot scale plan. So, what looks like a small property on there, you know, the big blank space in the middle is 22 acres. Okay, so we are dealing with oversized lots, larger lots. There is a large portion of the western property that could be served by public sewer, okay? The public sewer ends at the end of the development on Spruce Street and at the end of the development on Roosevelt Street. So yes, there is some engineering work that needs to be done, for sure. But to say that this can only yield 30 lots, I think would not be truthful.
One thing I will say is the Copley Whitehall Sewer Authority was asked by the Board of Commissioners a number of years ago to do a study as far as what would be the viability of sewering this. And being the senior member, I participated in that study. The authority spent $25,000 on it. And in order to meet the EDU requirements of this total commitment would mean that we would have to bore under 145, and we would have to introduce pumping systems in order to take it up over the hill, down into the village of Cementon. The estimate at the time was approximately $25 million. And the Board of Commissioners at the time and the Board of the Copley Whitehall Sewer Authority felt that was an unacceptable number to put the burden on the ratepayers of the Copley Whitehall Sewer Authority.
And that's fair. I would say the one comment that I have is, number one, this would start with on-lot soil testing. So with this plan, these are minimum size lots for that type of development, single family, detached dwellings, on-lot systems. There is public water already available. Whether or not you would introduce a pump station or something of that style to this plan, that's something else entirely. But that's not what we're
That's the
proposing.
unknown. We don't know if the DEP would let them put, private systems in, and would the systems perk?
And
There's
they
no
might
way
not
of
ha-
knowing.
And they might not have to. You
Right.
have soils that are consistent with the rest of the soils that are in the township. Again, there are steep slopes out here. Many of those lots are oversized. And again, this plan has not been engineered, okay? But it does meet the zoning requirements. It should also be noted, there's 5,400 feet of road frontage that could have lots on it. So without putting a single road in, you could test for approximately 45 lots and meet the township's current zoning requirements. So that's without any improvements, really, just, maybe some widening of roadways. So that's still more significant than 30 lots or however many lots was discussed previously.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Pelagian.
Robert Pelagian, 415 Oakwood Drive, Whitehall, PA. I'm a professional land surveyor, just like Mr. Gula, who's a fellow professional. I work for myself. I own Bascom's Figure Incorporated. I've been retained by 3 different individuals over the years to look at this property when it was owned by Joe Udicello, he being one of them. And at that time, based on my 38-plus years' experience as a professional land surveyor, having walked significant portions of this property, both when I surveyed the adjoining Groller property back in 1997 and again for Mr. Udicello, and knowing the soils up there, and I'd like to clarify a few things as far as the soils go, because there's been a lot of discussion about Class A or Class 1 soils and how that this particular farm is the only farm in the township that has those soils. The Lehigh County Soil Survey prepared by the United States Department of Agriculture has what's called capability units. And the capability units of the Duffield soils, which are predominant on this site, are also the same capability units as Washington soil. The property across the street is mostly Washington soils, as are most of the Lazarus farm. There's been a lot of innuendo that this is the last farm left in the township. It is not, and we know that. There are other farms around on this township that are as big, if not bigger, and can be or should be preserved. But I will say, when I was working for Mr. Udicello, based on my experience, and based on the fact that only a small portion of this property could be sewered by public sewer through gravities, and that one of the big issues, as Mr. Marks brought up, is the capacity throughout the village of Egypt, we got approximately 42 homes. Now, that varied slightly, but that's based on my experience as far as doing soil testing. And I think that needs to be brought out here. As Mr. Snyder stated, 150 plus acres, whichever that number is, you're not getting that entirely preserved as farmland. There's a lot of steep slopes that adjoin the Groller property. There are some wetlands that are involved in this property. And again, I'm speaking from experience. I've been on that property. I know it. Do I know every single inch? I do not. But as a land surveyor and someone who surveyed properties around it, let's be realistic as to what we're preserving. Most of it, and most of the people who are sitting here, who are Egypt residents, and I fully respect them 100%, they're looking at the property that's adjacent to Meadows Edge. And that's the reality. That's Phillips Street and the rest of them. And when all that section of Egypt was constructed, I don't remember anybody coming out and complaining about that development. When Mr. Bertoni built Sanibel Court, there was no complaint about that. Mr. Bertoni was a surveyor. I respect him for developing his property. I have the utmost respect for Ribello. But there was nobody there complaining about that. It's almost as though it's okay that I block someone else's view, but nobody can block mine. And I think that's very poor planning. As a member of the Whitehall Township Planning Commission, I'm going on my 24th year now, and I was involved.
I'll grant 3 extra minutes since we grant. Okay.
Okay.
You can have 3 extra minutes because Mr. Gula got 3 extra minutes and this is an engineering discussion, but let's try to keep it.
I'll keep it as short as possible.
Okay.
When we prepared the Whitehall Township Comprehensive Plan update, we engaged urban planning and research, if I remember correctly. And there were a number of issues concerning farmland preservation or open space development. And they had some planning ideas where you have little fingers of preserved area. And I was completely against it, and I'm sure the township engineer can remember that, to the point where the sketch that I drew up is what's been included in the comprehensive plan update. The comprehensive plan update envisioned that a property just like this would eventually be developed, but that it was going to be developed where only 40% of the property actually received construction, received homes. 60% was going to be left. It was going to be developed and unimproved. And we had that in our recommendations to the Board of Commissioners for comprehensive plan update. Unfortunately, those tools were never utilized. So we as a planning commission, and we did extensive surveys of the township. When we would write out questionnaires, we specifically said, do you want open space preserved? And the majority answer at that time was yes. And then we said, if you want open space preserved, are you willing to have your taxes hiked? And the resounding response was no. Now, I'm just tabulating what was returned to us, because we wrote real world questions. So when comments are made about poor planning that's been done in the township over the years, or development's evil, or whatever, there's been attacks on me personally as chairman of the planning commission, and I resent them. And I will tell you, sitting on my seat right now is my letter of resignation. That's how upset I am over this. That is correct, Mr. Ginder. I am not happy about this at all because of the personal attacks that have been against me personally. And that's not right. I've volunteered for this township. I've not been paid. I've volunteered for 24 years serving my community. I thought it was my way of giving back to the community, and it's been thrown back in my face recently, and I resent it. And all I can say is that we tried our best as a planning commission. I know Mr. Snyder was on the planning commission at that time. Lee Rackus is sitting in the audience, and she was the township representative. Frank Clark was the township representative at that time. We worked hard and we gave the commissioners tools. Unfortunately, the commissioners did not adopt those tools. Had they, I don't think we'd be in this position right now. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I would just like to add that I'm a geologist by profession, 29 years, and I do know that those soils could possibly pass PERC. It depends on the contractor you hire to do the PERC testing. We have homes on septic that we decided here as a board not to require them to get on public sewer because the septic works. So, I mean, if it works for those little lots up at Eagle Point, I can see it working here at this. That's all I'll have to say.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. McCool?
George McCool, 4314 Abigail Lane. I just have a question for probably Solicitor Gross can answer this question is, on the school board, whenever we lose a tax base, we have a chance to review it and look through it. So anytime, let's say there's a commercial property, they want to reduce their tax contribution, their property assessment to the township, we have to review that. Is there anything that says that we have to review something like this where we're going to lose some sort of a tax base in the township? Because once this goes preserved, there's no more tax revenue going in the school. So is there any ordinance that says we have to be able to view that as a school board?
Not that I'm aware of. This doesn't directly affect the assessment at all.
No, but there's no more revenue in, so I'm asking you if you can confirm or deny if we have to be notified about it in any way. I'm just curious if there's anything that would require that.
Again, this doesn't directly affect the assessment of the property at all.
Sure.
So it doesn't reduce their taxes. It's not one of those programs that directly affects their taxes. If it proceeds, there's an acquisition of an easement, which perpetually prevents development of the property. Now, if the property owner then appeals their assessment, I suppose they could do that, and the school board would certainly get notice at that point.
Sure, I'm just asking if it goes preserved, does the tax still get paid on it the same, or does it get reduced?
It doesn't reduce their assessment immediately.
Does the actual tax you pay on the property for ownership,
You
does that
pay
get
your
reduced?
tax based on a millage rate that's applied to your assessment.
Right, but when it's preserved, does that get reduced, what you pay in tax? I'm asking a question, I just want to know, that's all.
It doesn't affect the assessment immediately. Again, it's possible they could appeal the assessment based on the reduced development rights, but that's not happening now. That's not what's here.
Yeah, I was just curious to know that question. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor?
Rebella Bertoni, 4450 Sanibel Drive, Whitehall. Y'all know how I feel about this. And I just want to add one thing. This was a rather marginal cell phone picture taken on the Weinhopper. Okay. It's a bald eagle, symbol of our great country. And it's been living and making its residence on the farm. Several others have seen it beside me. If that's not a reason to preserve it, I don't know what is. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Fisher? Oh, ma'am, you have something?
Me?
Yes.
She's with the county.
Oh, please come up.
Diane Geringer, Farmland Preservation. I live in Weisenberg Township, that's why my address is probably not familiar. We have been working with the mayor, and he's been relaying information to the commissioners. We follow the same procedure that we use with other townships who have already created their funds. When there's a farmer that comes in, the appraisal, I can only pay up to $6,000 an acre. And when it comes in, the appraisal was more than double that for this farm. And so that's why we approached the township to chip in some funds. So that's one thing. And they're really good soils, mostly class 2. And I think it's a great asset for the township. In the future, people will be thanking you for preserving this farm because it'll be there for food production in perpetuity. And we inspect the farms every other year to make sure they're following their conservation plan and there's no erosion. And they can change what they're growing. They don't always have to have that crop pattern that's there now. And future, who knows what's going to be grown there, but it'll be there and available for agriculture. So I encourage you to pass this and then do the referendum. I think you'll get support for that. And who knows what will happen with the other farms that you're mentioning that will come forward to preserve their farms. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could add one thing to that, is that it takes a willing landowner to preserve a farm. We can't just force somebody across the street to say, preserve your farm, here's the dollars. They have to be willing owners, and I think that's what we have here. And just, Donna Wright had sent us a letter, and one thing, the question came up here. Lehigh County alone has spent $31 million to preserve farmland and continues to support the farmland preservation program. Only South Whitehall and South Whitehall townships are without preserved farms. Salisbury. But South Whitehall has used public dollars to preserve their first farm, and they're looking at passing a referendum as well. The state spent $69 million in Lehigh County alone to support preservation of 27,311 acres. So it's not unique.
Anyone else courtesy of the floor? Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, President Marks. I asked President Marks earlier today if I could make a brief statement. We've heard a lot from the floor. We haven't heard too much from some of the commissioners' feelings, and I kind of wanted to express a few of my own tonight. So good evening, everyone. I wanted to make this statement now before the vote to express some of my feelings about this process and the difficulty of this decision. I want to address the manifest fact that it is unclear whether or not this vote will pass from this dais in a few minutes. I know that most of you in this room may be disappointed if it doesn't pass, and I mean, to be honest, I will be too, but I want to let you know, and I want to remind you that this is how democracy works. As we have seen, this is a complicated issue, and without a crystal ball, let's be honest, I can't be certain which is the right answer for the township. And with regards to this vote, I have struggled, I have debated, I have prayed, and I've put a lot of consideration into this vote. And even though the vote may not go the way that I have finally chosen, I will accept and I will respect the outcome, because democracy, civic involvement, is how we function when we have a difference of opinions. For those of you who regularly attend township meetings and wait until the commissioners report in the end, I spend a lot of my allotted time talking about the importance of legacy, of the ways in which our decisions will affect Whitehall for decades to come. All the decisions that I make from this dais, whether it be towards development, taxes, or farmland, are made with that eye towards the future, towards that eye of what Whitehall is going to look like 50 years from now in, say, 2073. In the Gettysburg Address, Abe Lincoln said, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." In that same vein, Whitehall will little note nor long remember what we say here in this room on this Monday night, but it will never forget what we did here. That is why deciding on how to proceed forward with this farmland vote has been so difficult, because of the decades-long ramifications of what we will be deciding here tonight. Everyone up here on this dais is making the best decision with the information that we have at this time, and I truly 100% believe that. We may have disagreements with each other, but again, this is democracy. This is how we choose. And I hope and I pray to the Almighty that however this vote goes down tonight, that this will be the best outcome for Whitehall. For those of you tonight that may see tonight's vote as a disappointment, don't see it as a defeat. See it as a calling to become more active in Whitehall, a calling to help shape the next 50 years. There are going to be more hard decisions to come, and we will need active people like you who came out tonight to stand up and help guide the decision makers of Whitehall, or for you yourselves to step up and to become those decision makers. By coming out tonight, you have just shown me that you are willing to make time for your community, and I thank you. But I also implore you to either keep coming back or to find other ways to be active in Whitehall through other volunteer means, something I've been pushing very hard for the last 4 years. And these means that you seek out are going to be the ways that shape future Whitehall votes and decisions. So to wrap up, I just kind of want to say, as many of you know, I have decided not to seek re-election this fall. However, this does not mean I will disengage myself from the township, especially with big important issues like this. Far from it. I have a vision for what Whitehall will look like in 2073, and I'm sure that it's very similar to a lot of you people in this room. The vote either way may not go the way some of us had hoped tonight, but this is democracy. We all have a shared vision for what we want Whitehall to be in 50 years. We're just not sure how to get there. So look, let's work together, let's volunteer, let's do what we want to do, let's do what we can do to bring to life that shared vision for how we imagine what Whitehall will be in 50 years, no matter what the vote is tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? We're going to close it. Okay. Randy, do you have? I'm sorry. Okay.
Just prepared a statement that I'd like to read as well. To the residents of Whitehall and the Board of Commissioners, as we prepare to vote on this farmland preservation measure, I want to express my sincere disappointment with the process that has led us here. In my eyes, the methods employed were less than transparent, and the situation was handled in an unfavorable and forced manner. The process felt rushed, and the pressure to pass this measure was intense. As a public servant, I'm aware that lobbying is an inherent part of the political process. However, the relentless phone calls and messages from certain parties were beyond irritating. I was even subject at times to political threats from a fellow commissioner who passionately supports this measure, pledging to withdraw support for me if I did not back this particular proposal. This encounter has led me to seriously reconsider my commitment to this role and the value of my service. I firmly believe that such tactics are a significant problem in politics. They tend to try bullying individuals into voting for measures they are uncomfortable with, leading to negative experiences that can drive away dedicated public servants who genuinely seek to make a difference. Nevertheless, despite my grievances, I am not fundamentally opposed to the measure we are voting on today, and I want to stick to what we are voting on today. My family has deep roots in farming, my grandfather being a farmer in his native country, and my father currently involved and passionate about agriculture as well. I am not against preserving this land, and hearing from many who are opposed to this tonight, they too are not opposed to preserving the land for farm use, which is the actuality of the proposal here. I will attempt to focus on the issue at hand, even though I strongly disagree with how we got here. The way this proposal was presented has left a bitter feeling. I agreed to reconsider this preservation issue with the requirement that a financial plan be put in place before committing taxpayer money. That plan has been presented. Despite the hurried timeline, I acknowledge the considerable effort that our staff has put into this, which should not be overlooked. I will be voting in favor of this measure, but I want those orchestrating this pressure campaign, not the farmers, to understand that I will not remain silent going forward. I will hold individuals responsible for their tactics and will work towards a fair and more transparent political process. It is my strong belief that for some in positions of authority, we have prioritized certain parts of this township while neglecting others for far too long, and this needs to change. That's all I have.
Mr. Kinder?
I promise to be brief. I usually don't like to read off paper, but I don't wish to keep circling around and making the same statements. I wish to be very frank and curt. First off, I have never met the Weinhofer family to my knowledge.
Can you use your microphone?
I'm sorry.
Hard to hear you.
You have to see the light go on.
Pull it down a little, Phil.
It's working.
Try it now, try it now.
There we go. Now I got a green light.
Phil, you've never.
First off, I've never met the Weinhofer family to my knowledge. However, having listened to listening to them the last few months, I believe them to be a hardworking, honest family. I was raised on a farm in a rural area of West Penn Township, which to this day is still very rural. I understand the feeling towards the land, and that's what I learned years ago is what I've heard from the Weinhofer family all the way through this. And anybody who does not believe that, you're wrong. This is an honorable family. That being out of the way, I totally support farmland and open space preservation. However, I am not in favor of using Lafarge Fund account to pay for it. The Lafarge Fund was created to fund the purchase of capital equipment and capital projects. It was used twice as a tax anticipation loan of short duration, usually 3 to 4 months, to save taxpayer money by not having to borrow money beginning of year till revenues come in, usually around April. Destroying the Lafarge Fund by taking $375,000 out of it long-term over years and losing the interest, especially at this time when interest rates are favorable to the account, will certainly cut back on the original intent to help purchase needed township equipment and stretch valuable tax revenues. I understand the original intent, as I was on my first term as a commissioner at the time the Lafarge Fund was established in the late 1990s. So I know the intent of it, and I know that it not be corrupted was the intention at that time. Also bear in mind, what if the township has an emergency needed for costly repairs or equipment and the fund is drained? Having this cushion over the years has been a great find. No matter how this vote turns out, I believe it's important to work together to move ahead, move forward, learn, and find a solution as not to be again rushed into decisions about future needs and wants of Whitehall Township and all the residents. And I will conclude. Thank you for listening.
Any more comments from the board?
Okay.
Go for it.
When I look at this, I don't see it as a problem. I see how are we going to get things done. And I can see Mr. Ginder's side, I can see the other side, but what I always favor is what is it that we might be able to achieve in the future? And the possibility exists that we would not be able to preserve this land. And just so, and again, a lot of people are unaware that once it goes into this preservation, they can't go ahead and just say, hey, we're going to sell off 10 acres over here and we're going to have some houses built in it. It stays like this forever. And it's not going to generate that much tax income, but it's still going to, some tax money's coming in. It doesn't say, oh, the land is zero. And I understand where you're coming from, because when I was the treasurer here and the controller down at the county, questions like that were always brought up, you know, and the way it is, you're still going to have some tax revenue, albeit not that much. So I've been hoping that this would pass just because of what the potential in the future of it being good or bad. And I'm so optimistic all the time. I'm thinking everything's going to be good. So that we know how my vote's going to be then.
Mr. Warren, comments?
I'm a supporter of this. I know we have a healthy budget. We turned a surplus last year. We got a memo in March. I would like to see us aggressively pay this back. I'm supporting the project. I'm one of those that want to see the future of Whitehall remain a township and not become closer and closer and closer to a third-class city. To suggest that developing it everywhere creates a revenue stream that will pay all our debt, that's what they said in 1970. We had 25 cops back then, and they moved us into a small building over there. It was a retrofit of an ambulance corp. We now have a budget for 50 officers, and it's only going to get bigger. And so maintenance liability, Spring Street, $300,000 in road materials alone. So there's cost with development. It's not at all a walk in the park. It's not all for profit. And I just think this is a key property, a willing landowner, and an opportunity that the 10 other farms it's right behind this program that want to take those dollars. And the first time that Lehigh County has offered it back to Whitehall. So I'm supporting this.
Okay, with that being said, please pull the board.
Okey dokey. Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Ginder.
No.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Attia.
Yes.
Was he yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And President Marks.
Before I vote, well, I just want to say something. I want to say this. Because I'm last to vote, my vote really doesn't even mean anything, and it will not change the outcome. I could vote present, as other members have in the past, but I believe that would be inappropriate. I've been told by fellow board members and members of the public that if I don't vote yes for this, it would potentially ruin my political ambitions. And I have even been accused of being pro-development, and I'm on the wrong side of history. I hope that won't be the case. And please let me explain myself. I served 4 years on the Planning Commission and almost 7.5 years as a commissioner here, and 14 years on the Copley-Whitehall Sewer Authority, and I still serve. And I've always put the best interest of the taxpayers and ratepayers of this community first and foremost. I have had developers make monetary offers to me to support my campaigns, but I always thought it was inappropriate as a legislative member to take any money because I believe money buys influence and favor, and I never accepted a dime. This whole situation has been complicated, and both supporters and non-supporters have put tons of misinformation on social media. Let me try to set the record straight. I live in Egypt, and it's been alleged on social media that the good old boys that live in Egypt run the township, and that there is favoritism. That cannot be farther from the truth. I could selfishly have just voted yes on behalf of Egypt, but I represent 29,000 citizens in this township that elected me. The county also had me confused during this whole process. In the beginning, they required a larger township match and then lowered that requirement arbitrarily. Then they told us, after I asked, if it was reasonable to see if we had a surplus at the end of the year to fund this because this wasn't budgeted, and they even suggested if we did not have enough surplus, we could fill the shortfall in next year's budget, but then pulled that back also. They also told us, even if we didn't participate, they would still provide the county share, and then pulled that back. The timeline also has changed numerous times and became confusing. I also understand the Weinhoffers may have based some of their business decisions on bad information, and I'm sorry for that. You are very nice people, and there is definitely a major communication breakdown. I actually support farmland preservation and believe that if we had the measures in place, this wouldn't be the situation. I admire farmers. They grow our food and are good stewards of our land. And who wouldn't? I have been told that the majority of people support farmland preservation in this township, and I believe that. But I also believe that we should have had a referendum in place that supports it and a revenue stream that all the people in the township support. I also believe that the Lafarge Fund was set up for specific purposes, but not for this purpose. But if the board votes majority to borrow from it, I will support it. It's the will of the people, and that's democracy. Thank you. My vote is no.
Okay, bill number 30 dash 2023.
You got to, okay.
It has 4 ayes, 2 nays. Now the bill passes.
Thank you.
Passes. Yeah.
Just so people can.
Yeah, anyone, ma'am?
Can I ask a question?
Very,
It just passed, so
it passed, okay, thank you.
just to tell
Thank you for
people that
understanding.
if they-
Would anyone like to leave? You're free to leave if you would like, or you're more welcome to stay.
Hey, that doesn't mean you, Myers. No, it's always disruptive when it's, the crowd was.
No, I
That's all. And besides, it makes them feel a little bit, more comfortable.
Bill. What's-
It's not.
Now it,
Not. It's not working.
It's not going green.
Maybe he needs a battery or a crank.
this is,
The mic's not.
It was something that everybody.
ah,
I don't
Wow.
remember exactly,
Oh, yeah.
but it was
That's
just.
really
Because you guys were
something.
like pulling from Peter to pay Paul, come on.
Oh, no, don't relive
It was
it.
the pavilion.
Are we ready to go here? Everybody set?
But you're standing, could you have to sit down? But the wrong way to do it.
What, ready to go? Public hearing and voting on resolutions. Resolution number 3271, a resolution approving the retirement and commencement of monthly pension benefits to former Police Patrol Sergeant Jeffrey Coleman. I'd just like to thank, and Chief, if you can convey this to Officer Coleman, thank him for his service to Whitehall Township. I know he did it honorably. I had a great relationship with Officer Coleman, and he's sorely going to be missed. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
Second, Fisher.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the floor? Chief, would you like to say anything brief, or?
Does he keep getting them up?
Yeah, well, he's getting his exercise.
I'll make it brief at 8:30. No, I want to just echo that. I think, I know Jeff Coleman my entire career. He's a fantastic officer, dedicated. He was a great street supervisor, and, he'll be sorely missed. It's the perfect storm of retirements in the police department, and everybody got hired together and everybody's leaving together, but, I wish him well. He's definitely one of the good ones that we unfortunately lost, so thank you.
We're forever grateful.
Chief, do you know his retirement date?
Jeff's retirement date was July 6th.
He told me every time I saw him, he had a countdown, and he was on his way to the Tahiti or the Caribbean or wherever.
He went, Bahamas.
Bahamas. Whatever. Any other comments from the board? Please pull the board. Any from the floor?
Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Attia?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
President Marks?
Yes.
Resolution passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3272, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor and Whitehall Township to enter into a settlement agreement regarding the tax assessment appeal of KRT Property Holdings Incorporated and the property known as 2160-2180 MacArthur Road. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments from the board?
Was that?
Yeah. About 2,500 it's costing us. And do you know how much the school district had to give up?
5 times that,
5 times that.
more than that probably, I don't know. It's a, big strip mall, so high assessment.
And there'll be more coming
Oh, yeah,
with the reassessments at this point.
the mall is in the
Any
pipeline.
more money lost. Thank you, Jack.
Any more questions from the board? Any questions from the floor? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
Commissioner Attia?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
And President Marks?
Yes.
Resolution passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3273, a resolution requesting a Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Commonwealth Finance Authority Multimodal Transportation Fund grant for the Ironton Rail Trail Safety Improvements Project. Do I have a motion?
Okay. I'll take it.
Fisher, Warren? Okay. Any questions from the board?
As someone who loves the trail, I think this is a really great idea.
Those that you weren't here, this grant is to request funds to repave the trail,
Put up-
crossings.
No.
No?
It's the
This is not-
crossing.
That's separate. Okay. So this is crossings in the
This is
bridge.
a safety improvement, yeah.
Yes, to inspect and rehabilitate bridges that need to be rehabilitated.
And crossing
Crossings.
barriers
Thanks.
for safety.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the floor? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Fisher? Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
And Commissioner Attia?
Yes.
And President Marks.
Yes.
Resolution passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3274, a resolution authorizing the repayment of a loan from the Lafarge Fund for the Weinhofer Farm farmland preservation easement within 5 years of the loan disbursement. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a move just so we can talk.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Warren.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah. Does this mean, let's say, we get the funds necessary real early and we can pay it off sooner than that, the loan back? And I know there's gonna be a schedule, don't get me wrong. But I mean, we get into the 10-year one, and is it, we're gonna retain those excess funds somewhere else? That's what I couldn't understand. If we have two different ways of paying it back, and if we have one that'll go quicker and one that'll go 2 times as long, is it something that all of a sudden people say, to hell with the internet, we're going to the mall, and we're gonna get a lot of business privilege taxes?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Let me try. Neither of these require you to pay it back over that period of time. You could pay it back sooner if you wanted, so it's a 5-year, but if you wanted, if you, in this year's budget, decided to find a way to repay the whole thing, you could do that.
And Mr. Myers, can you give us your opinion on this, how you think it might work?
The shorter the better.
And again, it was just like, I'm going like,
Now
yeah,
we're in-
obviously 10 years is,
Right now, as Jeff has said, we're in a good financial position. I don't know what the future holds, nor do any of us, but I know in the 5-year capital plan, 2025 and 2026 are major years for buying fire apparatus and some other big-ticket items, so I think it behooves us to pay this
Better.
back as fast as we can and restore the money back to the fund.
and again, when you see 2 different terms,
Well, I was asked to put together options so that there would be options for you all. There had to be options for you to consider. I was asked to put them together. Either one, and I think I might have said minimum, would be the maximum amount of time. So if you pick the 5-year, you're saying you will pay it back in a maximum of 5 years, but if you could pay it back in 1, 2, 3.
on that same vein there, suppose things go to hell and we don't have enough monies there to pay it back in the 5 years. Does anything bad happen to us? Will I get struck by lightning? I don't care about the rest of you. And again, I don't see where it would,
If you
but
want
I'm
to
not sure.
self-impose something on yourself, we're
An agreement,
We extend it beyond 5 years if we have to.
an agreement to pay money back is an agreement to pay money back. You're saying, 5
That's how I
years.
look at it. I mean, you're committing at least 75,000 for the next 5 years, or you're committing half that for the next 10
You
years.
make the commitment,
So I
you make the
think,
payment.
you're making a commitment that this is going to be a transfer line item out of general tax fund dollars.
And that's how I saw it, but, I didn't know if there's anything there where we just go, hey, we're just kidding.
Might be tough, but that's something we're gonna know going in,
Okay.
that this has to be funded.
Okay.
I know a gentleman in the back with handcuffs who could escort you
It's
over
okay.
to the holding area.
All he needs is to pull out the thing on his holster.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah, I would like to ask if there's any interest on the board to taking this 5 years and moving it up to 3 years to pay this back sooner.
I would have
And
some
get money
interest.
back in that Lafarge fund.
I would have some interest.
Does anybody
If
have an interest?
possible.
It doesn't prohibit, but if you don't put that limit in there, it doesn't happen. It's kick it down the road, and, you know, we'll catch up with it next year in the budget. If the number's there, then you have to live by that number, is my point. Because we are talking about public money here. This is taxpayers' money. So you borrow it, you put it back, like you're supposed to, like you agree.
I'd be okay with the 5 years, and if we can pay it back sooner,
So there's
I would
there's
do
no
that.
interest in a shorter term, like 2 or 3 years.
you can do that because it's been an advertised.
Yeah, because it's advertised, you can't change it.
Could go,
You could adopt another resolution next month that says we want to shorten it, but again, I would say it's a
All right,
maximum
so
period of time.
And the other thing too is, I mean, every year we have budget hearings where we go over every line item in this budget, so, you know, there's nothing to prohibit us from discussions during our budget hearings of saying, yeah, we have the money, let's amp it up a little.
I just don't want to see it go the other way, that it's not paid back in 5 years, and well, it is what it is, and gone. If we're going to borrow the money, I want it paid back as soon as possible into that fund, because that was the idea, what that fund was to be used for.
I would agree. I mean, you're gonna write the check for $375, you should pay it back as quick as possible.
Any more questions from the board? Any from the floor? Ma'am, you can come first. I'll get to you.
Karen Shefko, 3303 Musselman Court. Is there any mechanism for the public to contribute money to pay this money back?
Absolutely. Write the check.
How do we do that?
Write the check, the youngest
And
child,
do we have
whatever.
to say, repay to the Lafarge Fund?
Jack, do you have Venmo?
We could,
No, is there a way, is there like a
No, I'm
GoFundMe?
serious.
Is there a way that money could be directly contributed?
Well,
no, I'm just,
some of us were talking in anticipation of the vote. Save the farm, let's have a GoFundMe, and we weren't sure how to do it, but now that it's passed, I mean, I appreciate this is a lot of money.
I mean,
And like, if everybody here, you've been coming to these meetings, this is important. Well,
If somebody would like to,
Contribute.
my opinion on that is if somebody would like to contribute, please, the check will be appreciated, and.
so do we just
you'll
write
be
it out to
notified.
Township of Whitehall and
I-
attach a letter? No.
Myself, I do not prefer to go to a GoFundMe account to finance Whitehall's needs and
Yeah,
desire.
I agree.
That's cheap.
I
As
agree.
far as I'm concerned, but
I
that's just
agree.
me. I'm
I
getting a little
agree.
older with this. But anybody wants to write a check, or we'll pass the hat tonight, whatever.
set up balance sheet accounts forever in this township for special purposes, canine funding.
And people
So-
contribute into the rail trail and everything else
Yeah.
over the years, so there's no reason that, it certainly would be appreciated.
Send a check to Whitehall Township and just write it, no. Who do we write? Contact Jack.
We'll talk about.
We'll talk about the method.
The method for donating, should
Thank
you
you.
want to, yeah.
Thank you, that's very kind, ma'am.
Another contributor in the back, Mr. Shine.
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. 4272 Abigail Lane, as you're talking about the terms, if you take $375,000 out of the fund at 5% over 5 years, the township will lose a revenue of $49,602 at 5 years. If you decide to do it for 10 years, the township will lose revenue of $103,058 if you do an amortization based on a monthly payment schedule. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, and that's fine, but the only thing is, the quid pro quo on the other end is that we're not losing it out, we're keeping that money in the general fund, earning the same amount of interest.
Guys, I talked about this before. The fund is the fund, and it raises money for whatever it's supposed to do. And if you do 5 years, it's quicker or faster. I do still sit on the Traffic Impact Committee, okay, for 25 years. We came in front of this board and asked, not this whole board, for $50,000 a year to help offset the cost and road improvements in this township. Frank Clark maybe is aware of that, Lee Rackus and everybody else. They said they would give it to us, and they never gave it, or they gave it and they took it back and put it in the general fund and recycled it. And the end result is the traffic impact fund has Zippo money contributed from the township. And it's all developers and everybody else's money sitting in at $1.3, $1.4 million. This is a loan. Loans are paid back based on the terms and the conditions. So when I hear someone say, well, if we don't have the money, that's not my problem. You need to pay it back. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all I'm asking. Not that someone says, well, it's a little tough. Well, we're going to skip this year. There is no skipping the year.
That's as I read it.
That's how I read it.
That's what we're voting
And
on.
I'm fine with that.
Right.
But I also know what happened before. Thank you.
It's happened many times, and that's why I'm adamant about paying this
Mr.
back.
Bertoni?
Suggestion. And I agree with Mr. Ginder. Keep it at 5 years, and add the caveat that if this ballot resolution for farmland preservation open space passes, then we knock it down to 3. You'd have
just
to
pay it off.
redo it,
We could pay it
obviously.
off.
You couldn't vote on it
We could pay it
tonight,
off at
but-
that point, because if a referendum passed, it would be but it wouldn't happen right away. That would take another year, correct? A half a year to collect that revenue. So, yeah, if it fell in that window and the referendum did pass.
Yeah, it wouldn't go till
tax-
2025
The
at
tax
the
wouldn't go
earliest.
into effect until 2025 at the earliest.
So if the referendum did pass early next year in the spring, or say in November, you can follow up a year behind that to where the money from the referendum would be generated, the tax revenue, in order to pay this down. So there's no way of guesstimating right now how this would happen, so. I just wanted to clarify that. One more time.
And I'm done.
You have 90 seconds left.
The referendum prohibits you from putting down the loan based on the open space arrangement as was read. And that's why I'm saying, once we go through the process of determining the referendum, 25% of that fund has to be reserved for only being used in improving the rec fees, but you can only use it for things that have been designated and go through the procedures. So it's not an automatic.
The referendum can be, if the referendum was successful
Passes.
passing, that money could be used, according to Attorney Gross, to pay down the debt,
It can be used to retire and
retire debt.
To retire debt, and without the 25% limit.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Sloniger, aye. Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder.
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Tia.
Yes.
And President Marks.
Yes.
Resolution passes 6 ayes, 0 nays, which means
Mr. Gross, with that being said, we can just table,
Move on.
don't table it? Just don't even read it? Okay. Resolution number 3275, over. Under other, motion to approve the appointment of Gary Schlaffer. Schlaffer, I always get it wrong, I apologize, Mr. Schlaffer, to serve as a member of the Whitehall Township Authority, term to expire December 31st, 2023. And the township secretary asked me a question. He'll have to reapply next year in order to reconstitute his service on that board. I just wanted to clarify that. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second Fisher.
Atia Fisher. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the floor? I'd also like to say that he served on that authority for over 30 years and was.
Worked for the.
Worked for the authority. And he has been, they have a much younger staff there because they had a lot of retirements. They had a great wave. And he's been consulting for them. And he was, I mean, all the candidates were very outstanding individuals, but he has really gone above and beyond to help WTA get through a lot of things just because of his knowledge and wherewithal. So I'd like to say that. Any questions from the floor? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Tia.
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder.
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniger, aye. Commissioner Warren. Aye. And President Marks.
Yes.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion number 2, to approve the release of escrow for completed and withdrawn projects per Deputy Mayor Myers memo, August 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
Second it. Go ahead.
Warren. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the floor? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder.
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Tia.
Yes.
President Marks.
Yes.
Resolution passes, motion passes 6 ayes, 0 nays.
Discussion items, Keystone Community Grant. Who would like to start? Ms. Rakis? Mrs. Rakis?
I know that I appeared before the board last month about this grant, and the direction that we were going to take with the grant was to more go towards blight remediation with respect to residential properties. And what we were looking for is kind of working with owner-occupied houses that would need additional funding to help address specifically code issues affecting their habitability. When I met with the county, and I had sent you an email about it, hopefully you all got to read that, they are changing their direction for the focus for the blight remediation, and they want to focus more on demolition. That's not really what we were envisioning with these particular properties, but we do have some properties that are very large and very visible that would qualify for demolition. But how I said last month, that's this much of the total cost of demolition of the visible properties that we have. However, I did talk to the owner of one particular property. They are interested in partnering with us, and they're working with other agents to try and see if they can get additional grant funding to address the demolition. So it's a very exciting and viable project at this time. So my intent from you was to ask if you would be supportive of switching the direction of using the grant funds from the rehab, which I still hope that at some point in the future we can go forward with something like that. You have a need, a real need with your housing community to try and get some funds like that. But to still pursue the grant, but instead shift the focus to a demolition project instead.
Would it be inappropriate to disclose, if I disclosed what property we're referring to?
No, it shouldn't
or-
be talked about, I don't think.
I'm
We're
just
all
asking.
excited about the,
Okay.
the elephant in the room, but
Okay.
it's not,
Fair
it's
enough.
not that
I
secure
understand.
at this time. I think it would be a very positive move, but if, my interest in is just gauging, your support, if you would support shifting that direction, and then we'll still pursue the grant. And like I said in the email, it's going to involve a commitment of funds on behalf of the township over a 3-year period, presumably with the third year being the actual expenditure of the funds. But because of the grant, we have to document that we're actually funding it. So that's what I needed from you to know, that if you're supportive of that, then I will still keep working with the redevelopment authority, and I can forward to them, the information, because we had to give kind of a breakdown of what we're anticipating using the funds for. And I could not do that without your endorsement.
Mr. Gross, I have a question. What apparatus do we use at Mrs. Rakis's request to move forward to appropriate the money for this in the future?
I don't believe you're asking for any specific action. You were
No, it'll
notifying
be-
the
No,
board.
not at this point, but I'm talking in the
It'll come during
future.
those wonderful budget hearings.
Yeah, that would come later.
Yeah, it would be 24, 25, 26.
But I understand this is really, you want to make sure that the board understands
I
and
would-
approves
yeah,
you pursuing that, so that when you get something to act on, you're not surprised by it.
Absolutely.
Two thoughts come to mind. The homes program, it's been around for a long time. The only way, that is the most appropriate way to rehabilitate a home that's in disrepair. There is a workshop that's happening I think on the 27th for the new program. It's growing. You have to get on the list, but
Yeah.
you don't wait 10 years and then we're back in the same spot. It's kind of, you have to get that project on the list, and it might be 1 or 2 years out. I think you referenced, Wichita, when we expanded the powers of Wichita and the term of Wichita for another 50 years, it has the same capabilities to some extent as a redevelopment authority. You're proposing that we go to a new authority that was just recently created at Lehigh County and have them apply for a community's grant. I'm not sure if that Keystone Communities grant requires a local match, but what Lehigh County is asking us to do is give them 20% of the grant and then match a set dollar amount every year for the programs. I'd like to see us, have Wichita at the table. Do we have to make the match in order to get a Keystone Communities grant for this said project? Or would the state fund it outright? That's what I'm saying. Or can we get the same bang for the buck without the township commitment?
My understanding from the Redevelopment Authority Executive Director is there is a match required, and the whole purpose of it is so that you can keep forwarding the blight, addressing the blight issues. Your intent is to ask for reimbursement of the grant once the property is sold, and then that money goes back into a fund from the township, for the township to use for future blight abatement. And the powers, I understand with Wichita, I'm not an expert on authorities, but I understand the huge difference between the County Redevelopment Authority and Wichita is the County Redevelopment Authority can own property, and they can also condemn property.
Wichita can do that.
They
as
can
well.
own it and condemn it.
I think so. And I bet you have to look at the bylaws and check with Vito.
Yeah, I was not aware, but Mr. Gulata is an expert in the field, and
But,
I just
so the
feel
money
that-
goes back to the county, the pool, but we don't get reimbursed for our
No,
upfront
it goes
costs.
back to us. If we put an assessment on it, that comes back to us.
So if we contribute $50,000 to property X, when they sell that property, we get our $50,000 back.
Or we could make it that it's the whole amount. He said that we can decide however we want to deal with that.
If I may, should this be moved to L&L, this discussion?
Well, right now, I'm just asking for support for the grant application. That's what he's doing.
But we're pretty
It's not a
much
commitment.
committing to the match then at that
Well,
way. If they get the
correct.
grant, then we're going to commit to the match, so.
Correct.
I'd like,
August 31st is when we need all the information
You
for
would
the
have to
grant.
vote separately to approve the match.
And if you did
there's
not,
no
what would
legislation.
happen is that the money, the grant monies that were awarded would be divvied up. And that's the other thing, this is a 3-agency grant. We're partnering with Catasauqua and North Whitehall. And so if we don't use the money, or we don't fund it, it goes to those other communities at their first option. Likewise, if they don't use their money, we will get the option of their money as well.
but on this said property, if there is an earmark or an effort to get the missing funds to go forward, we're going to have to commit to that we commit our dollars to that property, and then you're saying we get it back.
It's all how you
Yeah,
want to structure it.
yeah.
He said that's up to us.
Yeah, and then, once again, the county walks away with 20% of whatever that grant is, and, we have our own authority too, that has been involved with that project too, so, I'll just put it out there.
Jack, how do we make a verbal commitment?
I don't think Lee, Mr. Rakis is asking for any action, I think.
Okay.
Tell me if I'm wrong.
I'd welcome action if you want to give, if you
I
want to.
mean, if someone wanted to make a motion, the only thing you could do would be to if someone wanted to make a motion that you support submitting the grant application as described, you could certainly do that. Otherwise, it's really just a sense of the board saying proceed.
Do that without appropriating the money first.
I mean, there isn't a request to appropriate the money, so if
No, we don't even have a grant yet.
If-
He says it's a really good application, but it's not guaranteed yet.
If the grant is awarded, you would have to then decide if you're gonna
Come up with the
appropriate
money.
the money, and if you don't, as I understood it, there are other
Takes us out of
applicants,
it.
it would just
Goes elsewhere.
Yes,
passed on to somebody else, so.
yes.
Do I have a motion? Somebody have the wishes?
We're going to a county authority to do what our local authority possibly can, so I'm just putting it out.
Well, we can use both authorities, though. We can it puts more tools in our toolbox, in my
I'll
opinion.
just leave it at there.
Okay, I'm just putting that out there. I mean, the more tools we have in our toolbox, the more resources we could possibly use towards solving blight problems. I feel strongly we should do. But that's just my opinion.
maybe the thought of both isn't that bad, because on bigger projects, I would think there's more money available with the county, and on medium and smaller sized projects, then we can use our own authority. That way we can cover, you know, a wider range. Why, if we have both available to us, I think we're foolish just to go with one. I think, you know, the ability of being able to use both and using the one that fits best for what we want to do makes the most sense. And I have no problem partnering with the county on that.
I would just say, if the sense of the board isn't unanimous to proceed, then I would suggest a motion so that it can be recorded what the board.
That's
what-
a motion just to go ahead and apply for the grant.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. No, it's you.
Oh, is it to you?
Yeah.
Speak up there, mister. Okay.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. Can you please poll the board?
Okay. Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
Commissioner Dia?
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
And President Marks?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
along
you.
the lines of the Witikta who was here last week, years ago, Ken Oberholzer donated that drawing of Thomas Iron Works, which I asked to be hung in here. So
Thanks.
along the lines of the historic district, I thought it might be nice here.
Who was that from?
Ken Oberholzer.
Really?
Yes,
Oh, my God, that's old.
yes, many years.
He was on the planning commission, oh my God, the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
All righty. This discussion item wasn't on the agenda, but I was asked to bring it up. Wadicta was here last week, Mr. Newhart and Mr. Gallo. They requested monies for the dedication ceremony for the Thomas Iron Works historic designation. They gave us a list of what the costs incurred are. They put down a $2,500 deposit for the preservation application that came out of their budget. They're requesting that $2,500 be returned. They also request an additional, I believe, $7,500 with a $1,500 contingency built into that for signage, the Whitehall Chamber, labor and installation of the signs, reception with refreshments, a $1,500 contingency, and the total came to $7,500. Mr. Myers, where could we appropriate that money?
You're gonna have to transfer money in, because you've already given them their 25,000
Right.
this year. So we'd have to transfer funds from the contingency fund,
Okay, what I'd like to do
pull that.
is request that we transfer $10,000 to Wadicta to meet all of these needs, and if they have a surplus and do not spend all the money, that they return it to the township in good faith. Fair enough?
I think it reasonable for us to do the installation. I mean,
Oh, yeah, the township?
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We have, I think,
Absolutely.
$1,000 in to do that. That's,
Right, it's just their proposal, Mayor.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
You know,
I know.
yeah, I'm sure that the number is going to come in far lesser than their request. Mr. Gross, do I need a motion on this, or can we just authorize this?
Budget transfer has to be done by resolution.
That's what I thought, so it would have to be next month.
Okay. Can we have a resolution written up for next month then?
I'll add this to it.
Fair enough.
And then it'll be on the September.
Okay. And Mayor, could you reach out to them and let them know that the board's on board, but we're going to need a resolution in order to get this passed? Now, the timeline is tight. They wanted to have this ceremony in September, so I mean, I don't know, can they lean on their budget and then that money will be replaced? Can you, well, reach out to them and see what they have to say.
I thought there was conversation back as far as October, but I'll,
I know they had mentioned September. I don't know what the hard date is. I
They
think
said
they're still
They
planning.
had said September.
Right.
They had wanted an answer by September so they can get all their plans done with how far they can go.
Okay. Fair enough.
Early September.
Okay, we'll have a resolution. Okay, report of public officials, Board of Commissioners. Where do I start? Mr. Warren.
How about you start at the other end first?
Okay, Mr. Attia.
Just wanted to mention a
Oh,
couple.
I'm sorry, I'm just,
Just wanted to mention, a lot of good things happening in the Recreation Department. I think, our new rec director, Brandon Hibbler's been doing a really nice job. I've seen a lot more energy there, from the programs. There's a lot more visibility, communication, so I just wanted to kind of give him, some credit there, because they've done a much better job, since Brandon's been on board. The other thing I just want to do is thank the pool guards, our lifeguards, our Camp Whitehall counselors, now that we're wrapping up for the summer. I stopped down once or twice. It's just a lot of great Whitehall kids doing some great things, and I think they deserve some credit publicly, so I just wanted to offer that today. That's all I have.
Charles? Okay. I'll just cover it.
Okay. Like the president is gone. Okay. I have all good things that I just want to bring up. So I just want to thank, it was either Public Works or IRT, I'm not sure, but whoever raised the fallen sign over by the caboose.
Public Works.
Is that what Public Works? Okay, so that fell in July during one of the storms. I'm glad it got back up. That was a safety hazard, and it's good to get that thing back up. So, second thing I want to bring up, and I do not have the dates on this, or possibly not even the right month, but we have Adopt a Highway coming up in October. We have an Adopt a Highway coming up in October on the 25th, which is a Sunday, October 25th. There will be an Adopt a Highway. Well, we'll get you more details. That's the date. It'll be publicized, but it's coming up. We had a few in the spring. We had a great turnout. It's really making a difference. There was one over on Church Street last spring in that really hard to clean out cut that really made a difference. So I just want to applaud the work of the EAC for putting these things together. A lot of you may not know, but like the whole reason trash gets picked up is because volunteers do it. So if you want a clean township, it's because volunteers are doing it. And that kind of leaves me to my last point tonight. And it's a good story, and I really want you to ponder it a little bit, because I know I've been trying to wrap my mind around it. But I know about a year ago, we had a scout from South Whitehall, Audit Kedia, from Troop 12, who he's from South Whitehall, and he came to the township, and he put up bird houses in the parkway. So he actually came to the EAC a few months ago and said he'd like to do another project. And Audit, he's gotten his Eagle Scout. He's like 16 years old, and I mean, the question that was asked of him was like, okay, sure, we can find a project, but why do you want to do it? And he never gave us an answer. And we asked, are you doing this for a school award? He's like, no. Are you doing it for scouts? No. Are you doing it for a religious award? No. Why are you doing this? And he just said, it's because I want to do it. So Audit came out, and about 2-3 weeks ago, he actually helped clean up he got a bunch of scouts together, and they cleaned up one of the bird watching observatories, I guess you can say, over in the parkway. And he truly did this out of the goodness and kindness of his heart. And I guess it's something, there were no ulterior motives, there were no awards he was trying to get. He just wanted to do it, and he doesn't even live in Whitehall. And did you want to?
I just want to say, get the Whitehall Copley Press next week, I believe, pictures from the whole project that we did 2 weeks ago will be in that issue.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say, he's truly restored my faith in humanity that, somebody, a youth, wants to come forward and do something for a community that's not even his just because he wants to do it. So that was my good public interest, human interest story tonight. And like I said, it really, it's great. It's a beautiful story. So when you see those articles, make sure you read them and, just thank Audit and thank everyone who really is doing things in our township because they want to do something for our township. So good night, good luck, and God bless.
Rob Pelagian, you still back there? Please tear up that letter you're sitting on. You and the Township Planning Commission do an excellent job, in my opinion. They get so much done before it comes to this board, And Whitehall's always been known to have good planning commissions, and the commission you're chair of is no different. It's an excellent group. So please tear that letter up you mentioned earlier. Just some short announcements. We have to recognize the resignation of Richard Dick Farringer from the Whitehall Water Authority Board. He served Whitehall Township many years, from the 1980s to the early 1990s as a township commissioner. He later served on the Whitehall Township Authority for many years. He also gave years of dedication to the Fullerton Playground and recreation areas. We wish Dick well into the future. The second resignation I have is of Mary Ann Seagreaves from the Ironton Rail Trail Committee. Mary Ann has served on the Trail Committee since its start in the 1990s. Mary Ann was also the Township Recreation Director for many years, early 1990s to the mid-2000s. She also taught and certified many of our youth in life-saving and pool life-saving skills. She was also instrumental with establishing a Whitehall Fall Festival, as well as the Whitehall Fall Parade. We wish Mary Ann well into the future. And lastly, a note marking the passing of Dolores Riemann. She was a longtime township employee. She worked in the police office as well as in the treasurer's office in the last years. Condolences to the family. I have here a sheet for bingo callers needed at the Active Lifestyle Center at West Capley. There are 4 dates for September, October, and November left here, and they're closing fast. So anybody that wishes to do this, sign up tonight, because they may not be here tomorrow.
They pay well.
Okay,
They pay well.
there's the paper. Anybody wishing, please sign up. Lastly, pretty much, Frank, you haven't had much to talk about tonight. What do you got from Mechanicsville Road sidewalk? Now's your chance.
Oh, boy. Well, we're winding our way through the legal process. Jack's office is putting the finishing touches on the instrument that'll transfer the property from the township over to PennDOT. We've got a few more engineering hurdles to go through. The last thing PennDOT hit us with was they wanted an alternate engineering study to see if there's other option besides taking that piece of property and shaving it back, putting a sidewalk in. So I'm currently asking for a waiver on that. And then they also wanted an impact statement to the neighbors. Okay, so what's the impact to the neighboring property owners? So we gotta do that too. So this is the last thing they gave us. That's where we're at.
That's where we're at with
Yeah,
that.
I'm saying a lot of bad words lately, so.
Then when it's done, they give us, we take ownership of the sidewalk.
Yes, well, yeah.
Yeah.
The property owner will have.
Property owner has to
Will have
have
the
it.
responsibility of maintenance, yes.
And they're not funding any of it.
Well, absolutely not. Can't say any more, I'm gonna get thrown out of here.
Mayor, any progress with getting the Chestnut Street barn painted?
I
Anything
talked
on the
with,
schedule?
Rita and Brandon about that. They're working on it.
Think we'll get that done this fall yet?
I talked with one of our public works supervisors, Tom Bropes. There's a lot of work. You had mentioned the roof needs to be replaced, and we
Well,
don't
no, not
have.
replaced, but
Yeah.
repainted too.
Yeah.
It's rusting on the corrugate before that rusts through.
Yeah, they want to replace the roof,
They wanna
so,
replace it.
yeah. And there's also the doors, the old barn doors that open, the mechanisms, the clamps and things like that. They're all very hard to get, so we want to do a total makeover of it, so it'll be one of our budget items for next year. Because there's just too much to do. To slap a coat of paint on it and call it a day would be a disservice.
We gotta get it done though, because it's going back fast.
Yeah.
It'll get to the point it's gone.
We just want to get through one more haunted woods with, the volunteers being able to access that before we, do a full makeover.
And lastly, Mayor, we got this booklet on the fire services study that was done in July 2023. What's the next step forward?
Next step is we'll meet with the fire department chiefs and with the board to review it.
What kind of timeline do we have for that?
It's going to be probably into September, but trying to 14 now. It'll be together before the end of August.
We'll have a date set and times and everything. Sooner the better.
Yep.
Sooner the better. And that's all I have. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
I might as well pick on Frank, too. Can you tell me, what is it, are they doing at Taylor Village there with that big backhoe kind of thing at the detention ponds? I mean, it's been there for like 3 weeks now.
Yeah, okay, they're in the process of finishing up the pond. Right now, or I should say right now, but over the last several years, we've been in a temporary situation while the project is underway. And what that is a buildup of sediment. Instead of letting it run down into the creek, that area traps all the sediment that winds its way through the storm sewer while the project's getting developed. So now that the project is finished, we're, basically closing out, it's sold out. Now they have the go-ahead to remove all the extra sediment and get it to the final grade. So they have to overcut it in order to put the right amount of topsoil back in. So that's what's going on now. Then they'll be following that with the fencing around the pond and all that, as we talked about before.
So this is not something that's going to go on a normal,
Oh, no, this is the final
every
act.
20 years or
No,
something?
this is the final act, so it's, it'll be, all the elevations will be at the permanent final elevations. Right now, over the last, decade or so, they've been as an interim, project, so it would trap all the sediment before it goes into the creek, so.
That's what my fellow aquatic engineer commissioner
We
Ginder
talked
told
before
me.
about that.
But I went, it just seemed weird that you would have it that short a time that you'd need to have to
Yeah.
remove it.
Yeah, Joe and I talked about it, it's like, it was beautiful, the grass was growing nice, why'd they tear it all out? So that's why.
The other thing, and I know that they moved back the turning lane painting thing.
Right.
I'm just asking, is this something, and maybe you do know, maybe you don't know, in PennDOT rules that you can't have it start right at the beginning of where the cutoff is? Because that's the way it is down here at, before you're gonna change at AutoZone.
Okay, at AutoZone, they actually widened the lanes and pulled it back about 300 feet, so they could fit 3 semi-trailers in there. What you have at Mechanicsville, or not the Mechanicsville turn, is between the cemetery, the church, and Debakowitz, there's really not a lot of room width-wise to get through there. So when we first did that, when the Wawa came through, as that left-hand turn storage bay, that tapers towards the median now, that's just a small median, there's gotta be a certain width of that lane that people can get over where they're not gonna get clipped on the right rear corner of their car. Because if the lanes are full all the way up to the light and you start pulling over into that lane, they can't paint that where you would think that it's safe to be in that lane, not on that Gore crosshatch area, all right? That Gore crosshatch area is available to use if needed, but it's a cautionary thing where you're not guaranteed a full lane width of protection from the 2 lanes that go through. All right, so if you're in the middle lane, if you will, at that point, there may not be enough room for every car to get in that left lane and be safe. And that's what the idea was before. They had the concrete median in there, that that concrete median was gonna protect that last car. And it was, the lane, the storage lane would be wide enough to protect that car from a car in the adjacent lane. That was more of an impediment for the storage, because in actuality, there's enough room for a few more cars there. So the yellow lines, and they call that, when they do that cross-section, that's called a gore, G-O-R-E.
Well, they didn't do the cross-hatching yet.
No, that's it, well, they have the
when did
gore's
they
in
do
there,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
It's painted in.
Okay.
But, that still mimics where that concrete was, all right? But the idea is that in actuality, we can get a few more cars in there to stack. And when I'm speaking with PennDOT about putting that back, when you're in that situation where you need that cars to park on that Gore area, usually it's afternoon rush, where it's very slow, you don't have the highway speeds at 45 miles an hour. It's a lot less during that time of day, because it's usually jammed up. So they felt it was reasonable to put it back the way it was, because it worked the way it was when we did the Wawa. So, but I believe we're in a final configuration for the
It
paint.
was just a question because it does appear that there is room enough for a couple more cars.
Right,
And again, it was
By the book,
just asking,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
going like, well, down here, it starts right at the
that's
guardrail.
because they
Up
actually,
there.
yeah, they tore out the median and there's plenty of width there. The lanes on, excuse me, on 145 by the cemetery, they're narrow. They're as narrow as they get.
You don't have to talk anymore. I see it's a trouble. It's okay. I can go on to other people, pick on them. No. The only thing I have is that, the pavilion at the, South Church Street, part of the parkway there, it seems like it's coming along fairly well. There was actually somebody working in there, I hope they were working in there yesterday at around 10 o'clock. I mean, it appeared they were going in through where the window is. I guess that's the access that you would have. And it's looking pretty good to me. I don't know about the rest of you, but, so, I'm done.
Well, while you mentioned the pavilion, its target date for completion is second week in September. Once the inside's complete, it will be regraded, and then they'll take a look at access on the east and west side, and we're at least obligated to do ADA access on one side. The goal is to do two. And then in the future, in a phase, there is an ADA parking area that would be accessible to that pathway. So it's coming along well. We were really concerned that it sat for so long that there would be more damage, but the damage was minimal, and it survived. Sidewalks. I thought there was a change where the rule was sidewalks had to be stepped off of a curb line. I guess I'd like L&L to take a look at where a buffer between a curb line and a sidewalk is more of the rule and not the exception. And the reason why I say this is now more often we're seeing plans that come to us with narrower road widths. Like my neighborhood, you could park on both sides of the street and still get two cars down the street. Now we have short truncated driveways, narrow streets, and we're starting to see sidewalks proposed by developers right on the curb line with no landing spot for snow. And I thought the ordinance was changed, but
Well,
maybe.
the ordinance as it stands now for residential, there's a green strip. But commercial was always shown against the curb.
See, like on MacArthur Road, that's even like scarier.
Oh, I know.
I mean, we have some like Rite Aid is right up against the curb, and then the next property down the road, it's set off, and that's safer. So I think we probably should hedge on the side of safety. But, so you're saying residential, that's the rule?
The way the spec was,
Yeah.
as it still is now, residential has a green strip, usually a few feet, and the commercial is always shown right up against the curb, so that's easy enough to change if you care to do that.
You know, I did see one, like, I'm always concerned too, I'm trying to look at these maps. If we have a sidewalk there and a car parked in a driveway, does that impede the sidewalk? So I know some of these developments are getting tight, where they're using minimum offsets from the street side, and that's what I try to visualize when I look at some of these, so.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Since we're on that same subject, I was going down MacArthur, and like you're saying, you don't have to, I mean, here's a place without any sidewalks, but the parking goes right up to the edge of the curb, and I seen a car fall over the edge of the curb where the UPS and the thing is. And again, thank God there wasn't a lot of traffic like normal, so I mean, it was just, they screwed around with it and got back. But is there something you can go ahead and say, hey, you gotta put in some type of barrier that would prevent that? Because I can see people, you step on the accelerator and and all of a
Oh, yeah,
sudden,
there's a
they're
panic,
out
yeah.
across the road.
Right. I'm not sure I can look into that or have Jack's help with that. I don't know if we can order something like that on private property.
And it's just, like I said,
Oh, no, I
it
agree.
looked like a possible very bad situation that could have occurred.
Sure. For lack of a bumper block, it could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your fear, Tom.
Done?
I'm
One
done.
more sec. No, and just in general, I mean, the reference to southern part of Whitehall not being addressed, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, and there's a lot of people picking up the football and running with it. It's easy to say somebody else should do it, and there's people that pick up the ball and run with it. And, you know, I'm a supporter of a lot of our amenities. It takes a grant to get it going. And it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't take one grant, it takes 2 grants, 3 grants, or even 4 grants. And so, you know, I'm looking in the future, we have some of these things that we want, things that we need to address. And a referendum, if it would go down the future, pass in the future, that might help with some of those having a dedicated stream of funding to at least support some of that. Otherwise, it becomes a big, they have to be in the 5-year plan. So I'll just leave it at that. And there's been a lot of darts thrown here. Public shaming is not a good thing. I've been the flavor of the week on Facebook, communicating with an anonymous person, and they like throwing things out there. But I think that comes with the territory. And that's all I have.
I have nothing. Mayor's report.
I want to go right to radar again. I have that on there. Once again, the legislature has failed to put together a radar control that allows municipalities the opportunity to utilize radar. We can use it anywhere we want, except in the halls of Harrisburg. This thing, we are the only state in the country that does not allow their municipal governments the opportunity to use radar. And our numbers show it, the accidents and the deaths show it. I would encourage everybody here today to write to their legislator, and usually it's the Senate that puts it out there, and it then turns to the other side of the aisle, and it doesn't go anywhere. So write yourself a letter to your local legislator and ask them why not. We had a problem at Rosewood Circle, and I went down there with Sheldon, and we had some problems with the micro-surfacing, and we're trying to get that straightened out. It's in the middle of that right now. We've gotten ourselves caught in a situation where we had right to knows that we need to get out, and we put a lot of time into that. Actually, Jack Myers and Jack Gross have put a lot of time in that. It's amazing how much time they put in there. And we're hoping that we're going to get through this Belmont Glen thing, see where it goes. I wanted to let you know that there's a new store at the outdoor area of the mall, and we have Kendra Scott going in there. They've donated $50 million throughout the United States, and that just impressed the heck out of me. So I've been talking with them and seeing how we can go about
structuring something that might be available to us. And finally, Kathy Sidek, I don't know how many of you have ever heard that name, but she was a 1961 graduate of Whitehall High School, and in 2015, she was a graduate of distinction. She wrote 128 books. She was known throughout the entire world, and she lived here in Whitehall. And I'm sure most of you don't even know who she was, but she did a lot. She did an awful lot. So I wanted to make note of that. She passed on July 25th, and good person. I'll leave it at that.
She did write under a surname, and I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what that was.
The surname was,
It was romantic novels.
yeah, I don't have it here right now.
Casey Michaels. It was Casey Michaels, yes.
There we go. Who come up with that? There you go.
Thank you. Google Casey Michaels, and it's a wealth of writing.
Okay.
Treasurer's report, Madam Treasurer.
Yes, I forwarded everybody the July 2023. The two counts that I have access to are treasurer's distribution and cash depository, and I'm splitting the analysis fees and the interest payments with the school district accordingly. And the one thing I want to bring up is more and more taxpayers and businesses are requesting that we go to credit. Visit that. More and more taxpayers are requesting we accept debit card or credit card. It's even businesses that, Dick's Sporting Goods, they have a corporate headquarters that wants to make the payment online. I really wish the township would look at this. A year and 6 months I'm here now, and I've been requesting it. It would just make things so much easier for taxpayers, especially when they have these high school tax bills. They can pay them with their credit card. It would make things a lot easier. So I'm asking once again, and that's it.
What my experience with other municipalities, they just pass on that convenience fee on to the person that wants to
Exactly.
use it. It doesn't have to be, it's not a money-making, and I think it's a great way. A lot of people like doing their online banking.
I think it's really critical that we do it with all the check fraud that's going on right now. That I personally don't feel comfortable writing checks anymore. I mean, I'll go through the bank and have the bank issue a check, but we need to get there.
We have a lot of taxpayers that don't even have checkbooks. So they're coming in to pay their per cap bill of $14.70, but paying for a money order. It's just not the way we should be doing business anymore, and people don't like checks. You're exactly right.
Also, it takes the tax office forever to cash my checks, which is really annoying because I have to remember to carry that over. I only write 2 checks, well, one every month to their landlord and one to you guys every year. And it's kind of ridiculous because I have to buy a whole box of checks. That takes me 5 years to get through. So, yeah.
Joe, can I just say how impressed I am that you guys are still here? The last two months, people were here and they are learning something out here. And I think you need to be applauded. Come back next week or next month. Sorry.
You'll be here next week.
Yeah, I'll be here next week, month. But this has been impressive. I don't think we've had this kind of crowd for a while. Thank you for being here.
Okay, with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Fisher.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
With that being said, motion adjourned.